Hello and welcome to MySecurity TV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. My name's Chris Cubbage. I'm the Executive Editor with MySecurity Media, and this is our Friday morning episode. We're going to be diving into cloud networking first up and the transformation or the transforming your journey to Azure. And this is our second interview with Alkira. Our first one was with Atif, the CTO, but now we're going to be joined by Amir Khan, the President, CEO and Founder with Alkira. And they've now entered the Microsoft Startups program. So looking forward to speaking to Amir. If you want to support the channel, check out mysecuritytv.shop and our Cyber War series. So that's enough from me. And without further ado, I'm going to bring on Amir Khan, the President, CEO and Founder of Alkira in San Jose. Amir, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on this show.
There you go. Thank you.
Thanks.
Amir, we spoke to, and I was going to put the chat last time, we spoke to Atif Khan, your brother, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and which, I take it to your elder brother?
Yes, I am.
Oh, no, I was suggesting that Atif was the elder one, but I don't actually know that. But you've got quite an esteemed background. I'm going to put that YouTube link in there. Introduce, I think, the audience to Alkira first off, and it's quite a unique startup as well. And then I think we also need to touch a little bit about your background, so people get a sense of your pedigree, I suppose, in this space. You've formerly sold companies off to Cisco, and you've held leadership roles with Cisco. So yeah, Alkira and where you're at. Last time we spoke to you was December last year. You just finished your Series B funding.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on the show here. So let me start with introducing Alkira. Alkira was founded in 2018 on two fundamental principles. One is that the cloud is growing enormously and has almost infinite amount of resources, and many different companies are formed in the cloud, right? Born in the cloud. And they were scaling to enormous numbers, like Netflix, grew to hundreds of millions of subscribers. And so starting to look at that, there are great raw capabilities available in the cloud. So why can't we utilize that to build computer networks going forward as well? The second thing was, as we started to talk to customers, they were struggling to adopt the cloud. And the biggest hindrance in adoption was the complexity of the network. Even in a single cloud, the constructs, the details, the customer had to understand and build the infrastructure themselves. They had to stitch things together manually, whether it was virtual routers or virtual instances of firewalls, and how the policy got constructed, or you could not even do segmentation or proper integration with the hybrid environments. And then you start to look at multiple clouds. It was exponentially complicated because every cloud is different. There's no standardization, right? So we embarked upon this journey with the customer feedback that this was a great opportunity to transform the whole market. So we started focusing on solving the multi-cloud problem by creating a unified infrastructure across all clouds and your hybrid environments. And then we continued to expand beyond that after the launch. And now we cover pretty much end-to-end connectivity, right? As the cloud grows, we grow, because we are born in the cloud company offering services not only to multiple clouds, but also for traditional solutions like backbone services or remote users or on-premise locations through direct connectivity, or solutions like SD-WAN. So it's a very comprehensive solution. I'll go into a lot more detail in this podcast.
So basically, you would come to Alkira first before you start that journey, and then you can bring in whatever cloud platform. You provide that sort of the backbone, and as you say that you've now got that full suite. So you are sort of that single pane of glass approach, and then you can manage those multiple clouds. So you could be running a server in one environment and the operating system and virtual machines in another cloud environment as well, right?
Yeah, so our solution is called Cloud Services Exchange, and it comprises of what we call these virtual constructs, cloud exchange points. It is a completely as a service offering, which is the first in the history of computer networking, where you come to our portal and consume it like any other SaaS application. Once you log in, you get to this map, global map, and you can select the regions where you want to deploy the Cloud Exchange points. Again, these are virtual entities. Once you do that, we automatically create connectivity between all those regions at high speed, low latency across multiple clouds. And you can create segmentation, whether it's based on your internal departments, or if you have multiple different companies that you offer services to and you want to be able to charge back to them, we allow those capabilities. So you create multiple segments, and then you give us the credentials for your cloud environment. We pull down all the VPCs or VNets in case of AWS or Azure, and allow you to map those through full routing and segmentation into this environment without you knowing anything about the underlying details of the cloud. So now you can focus on instantiating your instances or storage endpoints in the cloud, or databases, etc. Right? So you have seamless connectivity across clouds without knowing much about how networking works in those clouds. Now, having said that, we have power users, right, like large enterprises who are very detail oriented and who need visibility and a lot of control from routing perspective, right? And we provide that. So all the visibility, compliance, governance capabilities are built in. You have a very strong policy infrastructure overlaid on top of the solution. You have complete visibility into what applications are running, and if you want to define policies based on, whether people can watch Netflix or YouTube during certain parts of the day, or what you want to restrict that traffic to, you have the capability to do that.
So you can push policy all the way through and into different cloud environments as well.
Yes, in ubiquitous manner, right? It's one way of doing things across all clouds, which is what the customers are struggling with it today, right? And that's why multi-cloud environments were not accommodated. People were focusing on putting everything in one cloud, although they knew that they could run, as an example, certain Microsoft applications better in Azure, right, versus AWS, or certain applications better in AWS in case they were the Microsoft customer. So now there's more awareness that solution like ours exists out there, and customers are starting to rethink how they deploy the multi-cloud environment.
And can you go down to, say, micro-segmentation as well? Yes. And that would obviously be within that cloud environment or from Alkira itself?
Yeah. So as you create segments, what we call the VPNs, you have the ability to tag what resources need to be part of this micro-segmentation. So within those segments, you can create micro-segments and define policies as to how that traffic flows or who can communicate with which resource. So it's very powerful.
So from a policy perspective, you can sort of implement privileged access management approaches, that zero trust approach as well, and just push that through. And are you, is Alkira doing that, or are you overlay services to provide that framework, or is Alkira able to do that? So are you kind of replacing, because I think from a cybersecurity context, are you replacing some of the vendors out there in terms of what they offer?
So it depends upon what type of a service. So let's take an example of identity management services. We can integrate with Okta or some other the technologies like that. When it comes to remote access, right, we can bring in remote users in a very flexible manner, and they get automatically connected to the closest cloud exchange point that we offer, right? And this is all done drag and drop by the customer in minutes, right? And so remote users working from home can come into this environment, and they go through the same stringent policy or security that the rest of the environment goes through, right? Whether it's multiple resources in multiple clouds or on-premise locations. So it's one way of doing things across your whole end-to-end connectivity, and that's something that the customers have not seen before, without downloading any type of software or without buying any hardware. It is as a service, and that's a first in the industry. And we are very proud of the team to be able to accomplish that.
Pure cloud native in that context. Okay, so last time you'd raised a hell of a lot of money. You and your brother know how to raise money.
Yes.
It was a crazy amount. How much was it? On the top of my head, it was 20 odd million.
Well, we have gone
No?
through 2 rounds of funding, right?
Yeah,
First one was about $22 million from Sequoia and Kleiner primarily. And then Google Ventures came in, and then the second round was led by Koch Disruptive Technologies,
that's
which is
right.
part of
Yeah, and
Koch.
they've deployed it too, correct? They've
Yes,
deployed Alkira. They're a client.
right. And that was the fascinating thing for us, right? That the client was so impressed, right? Coke is one of the most complicated environments. They are like a mini service provider where they have many internal organizations. Over many, many years, they have acquired many companies like Molex or Georgia Pacific or some high-tech companies like Infor. And so at least they have 20 to 25 internal organizations which have their own infrastructure. And then there is a centralized organization called Coke Global Services, which offers services to all these internal organizations as well as their own infrastructure. So you can imagine how complicated that environment is, spread across 70 different countries with 700 locations, right? And so we had partnered with them when I had founded Viptela, right? They used the SD-WAN solution from us. And so in case of cloud, they were very early adopters, primarily in AWS initially, right? And they had gone through 2 phases of deployment. One was in the co-location facilities owned by the likes of Equinix, where they brought in their data centers to connect to those co-location facilities, and from there on, they connected to the clouds over what we call the direct connect at high speeds, right? So their data centers were connected to the cloud. Now that merely brings you to the edge of the cloud. What happens inside the cloud when you have to build a complicated infrastructure inside the cloud, when you have hundreds of VPCs and you want to interconnect them and create policy? That was all done in the second phase, where they had to manually stitch together everything. And imagine, these guys call it the spaghetti mess that they created, right? And because it was becoming so complicated, day two operations, the troubleshooting was becoming a nightmare. It was all static policies, static interconnection of tunnels to, stitch all of these things together. So when they came to us, they already had envisioned an as a service model. And they came to us very early in our journey and started working with us. So as a matter of fact, they were instrumental in helping us shape our solution to make it enterprise class. Very early testers. In the first meeting when we had with them, I remember we were sitting in Reno, Nevada, in a small conference room. I was not there, but my brother and some of the other team members were there. And within an afternoon, when we did a proof of concept of kind of a demo initially, uh, what they had taken almost 2 years to build, right? The first phase was about 18 months, right? Planning and deployment of the hardware and software. And then DIY approach took another 6 months or so. We replicated that in 4 hours. Right? So they were blown away by that, how comprehensive the solution was. And so now we are proud to say that we are deployed in their infrastructure. And they were so impressed, and they said that this would be needed by every enterprise. And so they decided to lead the Series B, which was $56 million.
Yeah, I knew it was a crazy amount. Okay. And
Yeah.
have
So
you? I hope you've still got some left over, because that was only
yeah.
less than 6 months ago.
Right. So we are very
Um,
conservative with our, with how we spend money. We try to take care of our employees from benefits and pay perspective. We take care of them very well, but we try to avoid unnecessarily spending money. And we focus on customer satisfaction and delivering the best solution in the industry. We are passionate about our customers, and we support them very well. That's why they trust us as a small company. Otherwise, for a company like Coke to trust a startup is a big challenge, unless
yeah.
they have worked with that team and they have, the team has built the trust and earned their respect.
Well, then talk us through the latest announcement with Azure. And interestingly, this is like our third Microsoft Azure type interview where we keep coming back to Azure as that central platform. I mentioned the SCADA lineup with Mitsubishi
Right.
Electric. That's all built in Azure as well. So yeah, where are you at with the Microsoft startup program? and even in terms of being a startup, you're quite a rapid startup in terms of that funding you've already had. So you're gonna have to go global and scale extremely quickly. But the platform you've got allows you to do that. So how is Microsoft Azure and the journey to Azure going to be a bit of a game changer for you?
Yeah, and as you may have heard, right? I mean, from the overall compute perspective, maybe less than 5% of the overall global resources are sitting in the public clouds, right? And it's already an enormous, business, right? Whether it's AWS or Azure or GCP or others like Ali Cloud or Tencent or Oracle or IBM, etc., right? And it's growing very fast. Um, um, but the problem is that the network is hindering the progress, right, or the pace at which we can adopt the clouds, because things are so complicated. So Microsoft, when they came to us, they saw us as an enabler, or as a company that allows the industry to accelerate adoption of the cloud, which is huge, coming from a company like Microsoft, the enormity that they have. And everybody knows that AWS was the first one in the cloud, and Azure has caught up very quickly. And and majority of our customers, they want multiple clouds. And without fail, every single customer that we are working with is asking for Azure also, right? So we help not only accelerate cloud adoption, we also accelerate the adoption of Azure in those environments. So let's say you are an AWS customer, right? And you want to put some workloads which are optimized for, like, Active Directory or certain desktop services, and they also run cheaper or less expensive in Azure. So we make it a very simple process to adopt Azure. And I was on a call with Matt Hogue from Koch Industries today, who's their CTO, and he was describing how when they wanted to add Azure to their infrastructure with Alkira, it took a couple of hours, right? Within a day or two of testing, they had that environment up and running, which would have taken them months of planning and deployment. So very proud to say that the solution is in production with many large customers and small customers.
Is it creating a bit of, is this good for the cloud environments, creates a bit of competitiveness amongst the cloud platforms if customers can just start to swap around? And is it going to potentially put pressure on pricing and those types of services as well? Or do you think it's just that multi-cloud environment that is going to be normal moving forward?
I think a multi-cloud environment is going to be fairly normal moving forward. People don't want to bet all their, put all their eggs in one basket. And you may have heard the OVH news in Europe, where there was a fire that caused a lot of people to lose their data, and that can happen in certain environments. And most of the cloud environments are built fairly reliably, but once in a while something disastrous happens, and you lose a lot of important information. And for that purpose, people are starting to realize that they need to be in multiple clouds. And also from the cloud backbone perspective, they want to make sure that there is redundancy in the backbone as well, right? So from connectivity perspective, so it's important, I think, in the industry that people move to multi-cloud environment. Without fail, as I said, every single customer, even if they are in one cloud, are coming to us and saying that we need to move into multiple clouds. I've never talked to a customer who said that I have a single cloud strategy, right?
Even though the cloud providers will say, no, we're 99.9%, it's all okay. But and that's kind of where the point of my question was. A platform like an exchange from Alkira allows you to create a bit of resiliency and redundancy, particularly even in just as simple as storage, and in terms of your backups, you can now have a sort of a multi-cloud backup strategy.
Right, and because interconnection of clouds and going between clouds is made so easy. Again, Koch did some testing, and they were public with those numbers, where they ran applications between Microsoft Azure and AWS, and that they saw that even the latency was very manageable, right? So they call it the data gravity issue, where data needs to reside closest to the application. And so they were starting to build applications in a single cloud, and started to realize that in microservices can be built across clouds as well. So people are starting to experiment with more and more with the distributed applications as we move forward. And that's another avenue that opens up with the technology evolution, right? So as you bring technology to the market, that people will adopt it and they would use it to the best of their abilities, right?
And you're making it easier to use, as you say. You don't need to have a sort of an engineering sort of degree to build the stack on premise. You can just click a button and move icons around. Yeah.
And that's the challenge, George, right? So a lot of times what people do is they make it simple and then they don't provide enough capabilities, right? Or they make it so hard and there are tons of capabilities, but then the enterprises are struggling with adopting those solutions because it takes months or years. So the approach that we have taken is keep it very, very simple, but at the same time give control to the enterprises. So if it is a novice user, they can just come in and they can start deploying and get up and running very, very quickly. But if it is an expert user, they have total control over that environment. And that's the beauty of the solution, is that all that knowledge of 30 to 35 years that we have built in the networking industry. I mean, we are pre-internet service providers, right? There used to be no service provider. And I still remember writing code for, displaying the status of the ARPANET and stuff like that, right, in the 80s when I was going to school. And, from that, we have evolved to where we are, right? There used to be intra-company networks, and then we started interconnecting them, and we started to see the internet service providers come up. So we've worked with enterprises from the beginning, and we've also worked on the service providers side from the beginning. So there are very few teams who have that pedigree of working at companies like Cisco in very, very early days and building out the largest networks in the world and going through that experience to what works and what doesn't work, right? And then continuing to learn new technologies and bringing that mix of old and new together, right? Today I was, it's fascinating, right, for me, because I was on a call with a customer who's very sharp, right, and who knows the internet inside out. And we started joking about, Novell IPX or IBM SNA, and he was like, "Pardon me, guys, but I don't even remember. Oh, I don't even know what you're talking about." Right? So that's the history that we bring to the table, right? And
yeah. Well, I was about to say, you've even been with Juniper and the like. You understand.
Yes.
You've got that. You're in a really nice sweet spot, really, given your background, and you have a really deep knowledge of where you've come from, where networking has come from, and you've also had that foresight. You kind of know where it was going too. And you've had that opportunity to leapfrog, and you couldn't have a better client than, as you mentioned, with someone like Coca-Cola that had that scale need.
I just want to make a quick correction. Coke Industries, not
Coke Industries. I beg your pardon. So, sorry, Coke Industries. Right? I was just going to say Coke, and then I thought I better get the name right, so I got it wrong in the end. But in terms of that customer there, it makes all the difference when you've got it, and you've built it from the customer's perspective as well. So look, it's a great story. What is now the roadmap and the startup program? What does that actually involve? The startup program with Microsoft? Is it some training, workshopping, or is it just allowing you to get to front of mind for customers at their end?
So Microsoft partners with many startups, but they have a special program which is for a handful of startups, right, which benefit them in, just like we are bringing mutual benefit to the table, right? We are helping accelerate cloud adoption and adoption of Azure, right, by the customers. So they have a handful of startups in that program, and we are the only cloud company as a part of that program. And there are many benefits of joining that program, and they're very selective, right? So they help you in many different ways to scale the company, to bring the solution to more of their customers. So there's a go-to-market, technology integration, and vision and discussions on where we are going to take the cloud industry. So we are very proud of the team that we were able to convince such such mature companies with so much credibility in the market. And by the way, we are cloud agnostic, right? So we're working with all cloud providers, and that's the beauty, because we want to serve the customer. We don't necessarily want to bring out a solution which caters to one partner or another. We want to create an ecosystem which works ultimately in the benefit of the customer.
Yeah, and that must be a challenge as well. Those, as you say, you're working with customers, and then you're agnostic as well, which creates another challenge. I hope that background's not coming through. I'm getting some idiots drilling above me, so hopefully that's not coming through.
No, it's
Um,
not.
but look, Amir, thank you so much. We've kind of just running out of time. My last question to you is, what's your exposure currently here in Asia Pacific and Australia? Have you got any representations or partners here yet?
Yes, proud to say that we have our first employee in Australia,
Oh, nice. Here in
and
Sydney?
yes, yeah, yes, he is in Sydney. So, he used to work with us at Viptela also, and so decided to join us, and he's working with the customers there, and hopefully soon we can announce some customers in Australia as well. So yeah, we are looking forward to expanding into Australia. We'd love to visit it. We are cricket fans and tennis
There
fans.
you go, yeah.
You know,
Khan, the surname Khan gives it away, mate, I'm afraid. So
yeah, yeah. Squash fans, yeah. As a matter
beautiful.
of fact, Arthur was one of the best amateur players in the U.S. in squash, right? So
No, there you
he
go.
loves sports.
No, definitely high achievers. Absolute pleasure talking to you again. We'll stay with you on the journey. And as that note there says, transform the journey to Azure. It's one of the cloud platforms that Alkira is available on. And they've just entered the Microsoft for Startups program. So Amir Khan, President, CEO, and founder of Alkira there in San Jose. Thank you very much for joining us, and look forward to speaking to you again.
My pleasure, George. Thank you so much for
Okay,
inviting
all the
me.
best. Cheers. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.
The report of the day is the NetScout Threat Intelligence Report. They've just crossed over 10 million attacks for the second half of 2020. That's a 20% increase year over year and a 22% increase in the last 6 months of 2020. So these are DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service attacks. And the 2020 stats are max size 1.12 terabytes, max throughput 581 MPPS. Let me check on MPPS. And then we've got 750 attacks. Large regional attack frequency is the EMEA, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And then the last one there, average global attack duration 39.83 minutes. So there you go. It's the latest report on the My Security Marketplace. Welcome to check that out. That's the NetScout Threat Intelligence Report.